Okay, it is Monday, August the 26th, and welcome to week four of Drugs and Crime. I told you the quarter was going to move pretty fast. This means that as of this week, we are in the second part of the course, and we have 2 more weeks of class left before this quarter is over. I already indicated clearly that all assignments that were from 1 to 3, if they're not in already, I'm not going to accept them unless I've made previous arrangements with you, because we are now in the second half. So I would say this, that I would not accept them after the end of this week, at the end of this week. So basically by Sunday. So 1 to 3 you can submit, but after that it's not going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and share some information with you by sharing my screen. Share the screen. Okay, so let's get started here. Okay, and you know this information here. So now you also can see that weeks 1 through 3 recordings are here, and the links, and you'll see that we are in week 4, and then we have 2 more left after today. So now let's look at the assignments for the week. In this week, we're going to deal with drug-related criminal activity, law enforcement perspective, and you're supposed to read chapter 6 and 7 of Drugs, Crime, and Justice, and then the combating drug trafficking organizations and law enforcement response to the heroin epidemic. And then you had a discussion assignment that is due tomorrow night on forfeiture. Your initial posts are due tomorrow night. Your reply posts are due Saturday. And then your written assignment, course project, heroin and opioids, law enforcement perspective, and quiz will be due on this Sunday. And then try to complete the mid-quarter survey as well. So let's look at the course calendar real quick. And you can see this is where we are right now. And you can see how things are moving. So your initial post is due tomorrow night on forfeiture. Your reply post is due the 31st, which is Saturday. And then on the 1st, your course project will be due. And you click on that, it tells you to look at the rubric and the module. And then your quiz. And then, of course, your keyword. All right? And I do recommend that you take the quiz, as I said before, by Sunday, so that you will have gone through the material to prepare. Now, you can see here that going into the next week, we're in September. And once we get into September, I'm bringing this up for you to see. This is where we will be next week. Then you have the last week. The last day of class is the 13th. It is not the 14th. It is not the 15th. It is the 13th. So don't tell me I didn't know, because I mention it all the time. All right. So now let's go into the actual module itself. Again, let's take a look at the assignments in detail. Heroin and opioids, the law enforcement perspective. A minimum of 3 pages. And you're going to deal with these points in your paper. These are what you're going to include. A minimum of 3 pages. That does not count the cover page. That does not count the reference page. 3 credible, reliable resources other than your textbook. And then don't use Wikipedia because you'll lose points. And it tells you what I said a minute ago. The cover page and reference page are not included. And to get help, visit this course guide under tab 4. And you can find things to help you get your assignment done. So now let's click on the rubric. And you see the due date. And click on where it says View Rubric. And there is a rubric. And it tells you the same things that I just got through talking about. So you're going to make sure that you have at least three credible resources, at least 3 pages. Double space, people. Double space. You will lose points if you submit a single space paper. A double space paper with citations in the body and references in the end. So APA is required. Roman 12 as well. All right. And then going back to the assignment, your discussion posts. All right, I'm not going to go over that. And then you have your quiz. It's a 30-minute quiz. And again, you abide by the academic misconduct policy in the syllabus. And you should not have papers, books, notes, stickies, or anything when you take this quiz. It is timed. And then your live phrase is due also on Sunday. Mid-quarter survey, just so you can write a little bit about what the course is you've gathered so far from the course itself. Okay, so those are the assignments for this week. Now let's go back into the lesson content itself. And we're going to talk about these issues, drug trafficking organization and the law enforcement response to the heroin epidemic, which you'll see when we get down here. And we discuss some of the things, and then I'm going to give you this video to learn more about the perspective. As well, I'm going to share something with you that I sent you a copy of, Senate Bill 3023 in Illinois. So let's start talking about DTOs, drug trafficking organizations. Drug trafficking organizations operate all over the world, from Mexico to China and to other countries. And there's a big amount of money involved in this. I mean, a huge amount of money. And these organizations provide distribution for heroin, opium in the United States. And some are also manufacturers of fentanyl and camphentine, which they add to heroin powder, which is sold on the streets. Now, you should be aware that fentanyl is not grown; it's synthetic, and it can be prescribed by physicians in the United States. All right, and the other drug that I mentioned, caffeinatil, is a sedative used for large animals. Now, you can think about this. This is what you're putting into your body. And these drugs are not, as they say, certified to be 100% pure, but they are, and are not regulated, and overdoses can come very quickly with these drugs. And you can check this article on your own time, and it gives you more details. But be aware of the fact that the Mexican organizations, drug trafficking organizations, or also cartels, it's called, are the major wholesalers. And it's distributed by drug sales all over our country. Now, there are some people who advocate and believe that building a wall will stop the drug trafficking. That is not true, because the drug trafficking comes into the United States at ports of entry. They are hidden in cars. They're hidden on the bodies of people, and all kinds of ways. And these different cartels and in the world, and out of Mexico, they provide situations where there are people who will bring these drugs here, and they'll bring them out of fear, because if they don't do what the cartels want them to do, they will kill or threaten to kill the families. And so it's not about the money that they make. The drug cartel leaders are the ones who make the big money. You're familiar with El Chapo, who has been sentenced, and looks like he's going to be spending some time there. But his children and other individuals are still going to be running the cartels. And so you should be aware that they exist. And so the DEA, the Drug Administration, Enforcement Administration, seeks to fight against these cartels, and they're all over. They're stationed all over the United States and in countries about all over the world. And they work to try to stop these drug trafficking organizations from getting these drugs across the border from Mexico and other places. And so they work together with the agencies in the various countries. So it is very, very serious work that the law enforcement officers and agents are involved with. They do undercover by bus. They deal with wiretaps during investigation and other activities that allow them to infiltrate. Oftentimes, they're able to infiltrate an organization because someone will get caught, get busted, and then they will be an operative for the government and work with the government in exchange for a lighter sentence. Now, that's a dangerous practice because it puts them in harm's way and some of their family members. It says working any large-scale case requires information sharing among law enforcement agencies throughout the world, because drug traffickers don't deal with boundaries. They don't care if it's the Mexican border or the United States border or anywhere. So this is one of the things that you'll discover. Now, the DEA works together with the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives Organization, and they work together to try to infiltrate these organizations. We now have been joined with the Homeland Security. The FBI is also involved, as well as the Border Patrol agents, to try to inspect vehicles, because they find that there are drugs placed in phony gas tanks and in the seats, padded seats. They're even gone so far now as to make it out of some of the material that actually is a part of the vehicle and add it to it. So very sophisticated. Oftentimes these individuals work together. I'm talking about the federal agencies with local agencies who stop these individuals. The State Highway Patrol, the local law enforcement agencies work to infiltrate these drug trafficking shipments and from organizations. And you can see that the whole thing is that it's difficult to stop it. And so here we are, we look at, and you see in this map, just the Mexican cartels, and they show the different ones, and they come up through Texas and California, New Mexico, and get into the country here. And then you can see where the areas of the influence take place. You can see it all over the United States as well. Okay. So it's a real difficult thing. Now, because of the fact that there's drugs that are that get into this country illegally, it is going to create a problem for our country because individuals will be users. And once those individuals are users, then they come into contact with the law enforcement people. And I'm talking about I'm not talking about the people who distribute them so much. I'm talking now about the users. It says law enforcement officers at all levels challenge and have laws to support dealing with the use of heroin and drugs. And however, though, there are communities now that have reached a stage where it's an epidemic, and our country is at an epidemic state. I gave you an article about methamphetamines a few weeks ago, and I hope you had a chance to take a look at that article. I emailed it to you as well. And in many cases, heroin, as it says, has been laced with fentanyl, a prescription pill, synthetic, manufactured product. Painkillers and other things lead to individuals being hooked on these drugs. You'll discover that in a short period of time. And I already told you about heroin being laced with caffeine and what that's used for. And so what happens is these individuals who are addicts inject this heroin, and it puts them into a situation where it affects their breathing. They can stop breathing, their hearts can stop beating, and result in death. So what has happened now is there are almost all law enforcement agencies, and I attended a seminar just the other day where Illinois talks about naloxone and how overdose prevention is taking place. Well, almost every department now is starting to carry these. And if you do any research on naloxone, you'll discover that it can be injected, and what it does is it stops the effects of the opioid on the body, and it restores that person, but it has to catch them in time. Now, the naloxone can be given by injection with a needle, or it can be given nasally. And so what it does is it provides to save lives. Now, one of the brands of naloxone that's commonly used is called Narcan. And what it does is it counteracts the slow breathing that takes place, and it blocks the effects of the opioid, and it reverses the overdose symptoms. And it works, and it has saved lives and continued to save lives where individuals who were overdosed on heroin and oxycodone as well. And it is more departments are starting to carry these. You can do some research and you can discover. Here it talks about in 2015, the FDA approved a nasal application for naloxone, avoiding the need for injection. The nasal application is easier for first responders to apply, law enforcement as well as EMTs and other firefighters, to administer without a whole lot of training. The key thing is to seek to save lives. And one of the things that is a very expensive drug, but now there are more and more and more organizations that are starting to play a role in dealing with the prevention of death from these drugs. And you can, again, read that article that I provided to you. If you go to my, let's see, let's go back to my, I think it's on the course homepage too. Let me make sure. I think it is. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I think I put it on the course homepage. Did I? I thought I had. No, I did not. I thought maybe it was in the announcement somewhere. But I did send it to you by way of email. And I can see where I sent it to each of you. I think I sent it, let's see. Here we go. We're doing week 2. I think I sent that then. Yeah. Along with Senate Bill 3023 that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I sent this article to you, a state and national overtrend of methamphetamine trends. And when you read this, you'll see how the opioid crisis exists. And feel free to use this as a source for your research as well. So you can utilize that. And then in a little bit, I'll be talking about Senate Bill 3023. But let me go back to the module here and go back to where we were just a few minutes ago. Let's go back down here. Excuse me. So it is a problem. It's a problem. And so the naloxone is an attempt to try to save lives from individuals who are caught up on these drugs. And then this little link here tells you. So now I want to take a few minutes and I want to share this with you. Chasing the Dragon. Now this is a short one, but we have a long one coming up soon. So I'm going to give you the law enforcement perspective of how concerning the bill. So let me put this, took my headset off.
Prescription pills and opiates has definitely become an increasing problem that we see, not only involving the crimes to investigate actual drug diversion, but it, involves other things too. People start committing other crimes when they start seeing, the need that they have to get these drugs. I think the worst part of it is that it's starting at, kids at a very young age. Kids that are, middle school even are starting to find out what these pills are, and they might think it's fun at first. And then, you talk to them a year, 2 years later, and you realize it's a different story. I mean, so, it's just the degree that people go to get these pills is insane. I mean, I've seen people that drive 7 hours one way every month each way, so that's a 14-hour round trip just to get these pills because, so you need a job. You can't work your job anymore because all you care about is, driving up to get these pills. And, I mean, your life is over because all you can focus on is how do I get these drugs?
We've done search warrants in huge homes, multi-million-dollar houses, fancy cars, and we've done search warrants in houses where there's no food in the refrigerators. I remember one individual subject, I arrested his mother and his father, and also arrested him. He was injecting OxyContin, as many as 35 a day, intravenously, and he was using creek water just out of a local stream because he was living out in the woods. Everybody thinks they pop a few pills, it's no big deal. You young kids out there, you better just be very, very aware of what's going on with these pills. You can get addicted with one pill, and for the rest of your life, it will absolutely ruin you. It doesn't discriminate against you young or old, or you're black, or you're white, or you're male, or you're female. I've arrested from 12 years old to 86 years old. I've arrested grandma and grandpa. I've arrested the young boy that takes the pills from his parents' cabinet and takes them to school and gives them to some other kids in school. When somebody gets sick, gets rushed to a hospital, and thank God doesn't die. I've worked probably at least 24 overdose deaths that are 100% related to prescription meds, where it's too late, they're already dead.
A lot of students went down the road, a lot of young people go down the road of trying to drug for recreational purposes, and they don't understand the devastation that it has to their own life and the lives of their parents. I should add the victims of the crime include infants. We have had subjects who were pregnant women who gave birth to oxycodone, opiate-addicted babies and infants. They even had to have the baby in jail, and it's a growing problem as well.
A lot of overdoses, a lot of deaths. Scary thing is it's getting younger and younger. It used to be the heroin overdoses seemed like they were all adults. Lately, they've been getting younger and younger, low 20s, even into their high teens. So I've talked to hundreds of heroin addicts or opiate addicts, and they'll tell me the same thing. If they could do anything, one thing different, they never would have started in the first place. That's the one regret that they all have is that they started when they were young, and once you're an addict for life. And that's the way to avoid that, is just to never do it.
We're seeing a dramatic shift in how it's affecting the lives of young people. They're experimenting with friends at parties, and they think it's safe to take pills from the medicine cabinet or a friend. And during a 1 week period, we had 9 fatal overdoses in a 3-jurisdiction area. And over the Christmas holiday, I read 2 obituaries of people that I had arrested for prescription fraud and related offenses. Their parents buried them. They were young, 20-some years old.
So let me plug this back in. So you can see that there's some real serious problems with these drugs and how they're being used and the effect that it's having. And you're going to see in another, let's see, this is week 4, next week actually, a video that's more extensive in terms of details that you'll discover concerning what happens to individuals. But I can tell you that one of the neat parts that I know is that law enforcement is starting to recognize that it is an illness and that it's people are sick that are using these drugs. And I think, God, I had an opportunity to go to the seminar, as I shared with you before, where I learned about the effects of drugs and how they affect each of you. So I'm going to, I already told you about the article, but this bill, which I sent you a copy of, Senate Bill 3023, called the Community Law Enforcement Partnership for Deflection and Substance Use Disorder Treatment Act. And what this does is that this Senate bill provides the opportunity to allow law enforcement to work together with organizations, hospitals, doctors, probation officers, and so forth, to keep people from going to jail and they do what they call deflection. And what it does is, and it talks about what deflection programs are, where dealing with the opioid crisis, traditionally, there are two choices that people have when they believe they have a substance use disorder. The choice is to arrest or not to arrest. But deflection provides a third alternative. And a third alternative is to connect these individuals with community-based substance use organizations or services to address the substance use problems. I have said constantly over and over and over that drug addicts are sick people and that they commit crimes because of the fact that they need to be able to provide support for themselves to buy these drugs. And so what this Senate bill, and it is law in Illinois, by the way, it's law in Illinois, and what it does is it allows various agencies. Now, there is a chief, Eric Gunther, who is the Mundelein chief of police. He's like the head person in this. And if you want to do some research, you can check, and you'll find out Eric Gunther, G-U-E-N-T-H-E-R. He's the Mundelein chief of police in Illinois, and he has been a proponent, along with some other individuals as well. And they work in conjunction to try to help people. And in the seminar that I attended last year as well as this year, well, it was brought to our attention that what's taking place now is that there are more and more law enforcement agencies that are getting involved. So going down here, it says Senate Bill 3023 provides a roadmap for partnership between law enforcement, substance use providers, and community members to provide the development of the deflection programs. So what happens is that individuals can go to the place where they never thought they would get help. The police. They would only run from the police because they'd catch a case. But what the deflection program does is it provides a way to get help for these individuals. It ensures that the impact of the program is measured and understood by requiring the Illinois Criminal Justice Authority, which I've given you some information from, to work in the development, to come up with programs and seek to get funding for organizations throughout the country, law enforcement agencies, to provide help for these individuals. And even though this law is modeled after the Good Samaritan law, which says that police and emergency responders can use opioid overdose antidote naloxone, which we talked about earlier, to save lives from individuals, and it protects them from being sued in case there is a problem, because of the fact that it gives them the opportunity and incentive to want to help people. And then it doesn't require that a law enforcement agency create a deflection program, and does not require the state to appropriate funds for the program. But what it is a move to try to deal with this. Now, in this little blurb here that's hard for you to read, opioid deaths in Illinois, let me just give you some statistics, that because I have a hard copy right here in front of me. The first bullet point says the number of overdose deaths from all opioids increased by 82% in the last 3 years. And bullet 2 says opioid drug overdoses killed more than 45% more people than homicides. So you see it is a problem. Opioid drug users opioid drug overdoses killed more people than people who died due to all the gun-related issues, which we know is a very serious problem, which includes homicide, suicide, and accidental shootings. And then finally, opioid overdoses are not just a suburban, urban area issue. It is suburban and a rural problem issue as well. And so there are various agencies, and on the back of this, I didn't make the copy of it for you to see it, but on the back of this bill, I mean this paper that tells about what happened with this, there are organizations such as hospitals, there are lawyers who volunteer their time, there are state's attorneys, prosecutors, should I say, who work together, defense attorneys, Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, Illinois Drug and Officers Association, Illinois Sheriff's Association, Lake County Chiefs of Police. And then there are so many departments that are named. And most of these departments are all over our state. We have in our area here in Joliet, where Romeoville is located. The Joliet Police Department is a participant. The Shorewood Police Department, which is close in the area. I don't see the Romeoville Police Department on this list yet, but this is from last year. The fact of the matter is the key is that law enforcement is starting to move forward and recognize that locking up people, putting them in jail, releasing them without the adequate treatment is not going to help them. And with these programs, when the people come to the place where they can get help, they seize the drugs, but they don't use the drugs against them. The judges work together in cases, and if they keep these people keep themselves clean, and they give them programs that help them. And listen to this: if you fail in the program, the way that Chief Gunther was describing the program that they have up in Lake County, Illinois, which is a county that's near, if you know, of Six Flags Great America in Gurnee area. But in Mundelein is specifically his department, but up in that part of the state is that they have people that they help from all over that come from other counties. They have funds to house those individuals, put them up in the hotels. They have funds to help them to get the adequate treatment. And Chief said that in the session that I went to a few weeks ago, that there was a young lady, she failed 6 times before she finally passed away. But here's my point, is that people saw that she was trying. And not everyone makes it successfully through. But here's my whole point in a nutshell, is that you can then recognize that when you see the police, if you can get help from the police for your substance abuse problem, which is the last thing that you start to think, then that's good. It'd be nice with organizations across the country doing the same thing. There is another program, I don't know what part of the country it's in, but I do know that Illinois is one of the first states to actually have it to become law. And you can do some research on this, and you'll see that law enforcement is moving in the direction of recognizing that individuals are sick and they need to be helped as far as these drugs themselves. So that's what I wanted to share with you, the direction that law enforcement is headed in. And I want to encourage you, as you conduct your research in your papers, to begin to understand the direction that you guys who are going in law enforcement hopefully will find themselves in. Hopefully there will be deflection programs in your department. And you can research deflection programs, and you'll find a whole lot of benefits that it does provide for individuals. And so I'm going to give you the key phrase that I want you to give me, and that is S, B as in boy, 3023. That's what I want. SB 3023. And then you'll know what that's about because we talked about it, and you also understand how I really am excited about this and the things that are going to come. Remember, we're just one state that's identified and moving in that direction, and hopefully there will be other jurisdictions that will pick up. I love the fact that Illinois has taken the lead to deal with this. And so in the seminar that I did, Access to Substance Use Disorder Treatment, Outcomes of Police-Led Addiction Treatment Referral Programs that I attended on August the 14th, was exciting for me to continue to see the direction that law enforcement is going. It's not going to be an overnight change, but it's going to be something that I think that in the long run is going to be beneficial for everyone, and including our criminal justice system. It will probably adversely affect the number of recidivists, but that's a good thing. And so with that, so I'm going to say good night to you, and I'll see you next week. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll see you next week at the same time. Good night.